The rain had been falling since before dusk, a cold, needling rain that soaked the prairie and turned the narrow path to her cabin into a ribbon of black mud. Wind pressed against the walls like a restless animal, making the old boards groan and complain. Inside, the single-room cabin glowed with the soft, wavering light of a lantern hung from a nail near the hearth. Eleanor Whitlock sat at her small pine table, mending a tear in her husband's old coat, though he had been gone these 3 years and the coat no longer had a body to warm. She stitched not because the coat needed it, but because her hands needed something to do. Silence, broken only by the rain and the ticking of the cooling stove, had a way of growing too large if left alone. She paused when she heard it, a sound not made by wind or wood. Hoofbeats. Slow. Careful. They faded, then stopped somewhere close, followed by the soft snort of a horse and the creak of leather. Eleanor's needle stilled. No one came this way after dark, and no one came at all when storms like this rolled in from the west. Her first instinct was fear, sharp and sudden, but it was quickly followed by a deeper, steadier thing, caution born of years alone on the frontier. She rose quietly, drew the shawl tighter around her shoulders, and moved toward the door. The rain struck it hard, rattling the latch, as if trying to force its way inside. Then came the knock. Not loud. Not demanding. Just 3 careful raps, almost lost beneath the storm. Eleanor did not answer at once. She reached for the rifle leaning against the wall, not lifting it, only resting her hand on the worn stock. "Who's there?" she called, keeping her voice even. A pause. The rain seemed to hold its breath. Then a man's voice, low and roughened, carried through the door. "Ma'am. I don't mean you any harm. My horse is spent, and the rain's cutting deep. I'm asking only for shelter till morning." Something in his tone, tired, restrained, kept her hand from tightening on the rifle. She opened the door a crack. Lantern light spilled out into the storm, revealing a tall figure hunched beneath a dark coat, hat brim dripping, water running down his face like tears he hadn't noticed. His eyes caught the light. They were wary, but not cruel. She studied him the way one learns to study the sky, looking for signs of trouble. "You alone?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." "And you'll move on come daylight?" "If you ask it of me." The rain soaked through her boots as she stood there, measuring her fear against the look of a man who had nowhere else to go. Finally, she stepped back. "Bring your horse around back. There's a lean-to. You can dry yourself by the fire." He hesitated, as though surprised by her answer, then nodded. "Thank you." When he stepped inside, the smell of wet leather and cold followed him. He removed his hat, water dripping onto the floor, and Eleanor saw the lines etched into his face, the faint scar near his jaw. He looked older than he was, worn down by miles and choices. She closed the door, shutting out the storm, and for the first time that night, the cabin felt less empty. He stood uncertainly, as if unsure where to put himself. "I'm Samuel," he said at last. "Samuel Crow." She did not offer her name right away. Names carried weight. "Sit," she said instead, gesturing to the chair near the hearth. "You're shaking." He did as told, extending his hands toward the fire. They trembled, not just from cold. Eleanor busied herself pouring water for coffee, listening to the crackle of the flames and the rain's steady drumming on the roof. When she handed him the cup, their fingers brushed. His skin was rough, scarred. He looked up quickly, meeting her gaze, then looked away again. "Thank you," he murmured. "I won't forget this." She sat across from him, watching as warmth slowly returned to his face. Outside, thunder rolled low and distant. Inside, 2 strangers shared the quiet, each wondering what the night might yet bring. As the storm deepened, Samuel spoke little, but Eleanor could feel his thoughts moving, restless as the wind. She told him he could sleep on the pallet near the fire. He nodded, but did not lie down right away. Instead, he stared into the flames, jaw tight, as if bracing for something unseen. When she finally lay down on her bed, rifle within reach, she did not sleep easily. Yet beneath her fear was a strange, unfamiliar feeling, hope, fragile and unwanted, flickering like the lantern's light. Morning came slowly, gray and washed clean by rain. The storm had passed, leaving the world damp and hushed. Eleanor woke to the sound of movement. Samuel stood near the door, coat in hand, his boots drying by the hearth. He looked like a man preparing to leave something unfinished behind. "You're up early," she said. He turned. "Didn't want to overstay my welcome." She studied him in the daylight. Without the shadows of night, he seemed less dangerous, more tired. "The ground's still soft," she said. "Your horse could use a few hours' rest." He hesitated, then nodded. "If you'll allow it." They shared a simple breakfast, cornbread and dried apples. As they ate, Eleanor felt the weight of questions pressing against her silence. Finally, she asked the one that mattered most. "What brings you out here, Samuel Crow?" His hand stilled. For a moment, she thought he might refuse to answer. Then he sighed, a long breath that seemed to carry years with it. "Running," he said simply. "From a life I don't want anymore." Her gaze sharpened. "Running from the law?" A flicker of something, regret, perhaps, passed through his eyes. "Once, yes." The truth settled between them like dust after a gunshot. Eleanor did not reach for her rifle. Instead, she waited. "And now?" "Now I'm trying to be better than the man I was." She thought of her husband, of the man he'd been before the war took him and left her with echoes. "Trying counts," she said at last. Samuel looked at her then, really looked, as if seeing not just the woman before him, but the loneliness she carried. "You shouldn't trust me," he said quietly. "Maybe not," she replied. "But the rain brought you here all the same." The day passed with small tasks. Samuel repaired a loose hinge on the door, fixed a leak in the roof. He worked with care, as though each nail driven was an apology. Eleanor watched from a distance, her heart caught between caution and gratitude. By afternoon, clouds gathered again, dark and heavy. Thunder grumbled closer this time. When the first drops fell, Samuel came inside, expression troubled. "I didn't mean to stay this long," he said. "But there's something I need to tell you." Her pulse quickened. "Go on." He reached into his coat and withdrew a small leather pouch, worn and stained. "I was supposed to deliver this," he said. "To a man named Whitlock." Her breath caught. "That was my husband." Samuel swallowed. "I know." The room seemed to tilt. "How?" she whispered. "He saved my life," Samuel said. "Years ago. When I was running hard and wrong. He hid me, fed me, sent me on a better path. This pouch, it's payment he never took. Gold from a job I walked away from. I've been carrying it, waiting for a chance to make things right." Tears blurred her vision. She had thought that chapter of her life closed, her husband's kindness lost to the dust. Now it stood before her, alive in this stranger's hands. "You're an outlaw," she said softly. "I was," he corrected. "I'm trying not to be." Outside, thunder cracked, sharp and close. Eleanor reached for the pouch, feeling its weight, not just in gold but in memory. "Why tell me now?" "Because I can't outrun who I was unless I face it," Samuel said. "And because the law's not far behind me." As if summoned by his words, distant shouts carried on the wind. Eleanor's heart pounded. "Writers." She looked at Samuel, fear and resolve colliding. "What do they want with you?" "What they always want," he said. "Justice, or vengeance. Sometimes they can't tell the difference." The riders came into view soon after, 3 figures against the gray sky. Eleanor's cabin, so small and quiet, suddenly felt like the center of the world. Samuel met her gaze. "If you hand me over," he said, "I won't blame you." She thought of her husband's kindness, of the pouch in her hands, of the man before her who had knocked gently in the rain. "There's a root cellar," she said. "Under the floorboards. Go. Now." He stared, disbelief giving way to something like awe. "Why?" "Because someone once saved you," she replied. "And maybe this is how that kindness comes home." He did not argue. As he vanished below the floor, Eleanor replaced the boards just as the riders dismounted. She opened the door, face calm, heart racing. "Can I help you?" "We're looking for Samuel Crow," one of them said. "You seen him?" She met his eyes steadily. "No, sir. Just me and the storm." They searched briefly, suspicion lingering, but found nothing. When they finally rode off, the silence returned, heavier than before. Eleanor waited, counting breaths, until she heard movement beneath her feet. Samuel emerged, pale but unharmed. He looked at her as though words were not enough. "You saved me," he said. "So did my husband," she replied. "Consider us even." By dawn the next day, the storm had broken for good. Sunlight spilled across the prairie, turning wet grass into gold. Samuel saddled his horse, the pouch returned to Eleanor's hands. "I won't forget this," he said again, but now the words carried promise, not desperation. She walked with him to the edge of the path. "Where will you go?" "Somewhere I can start over," he said. "Somewhere I can be worthy of what you did." He paused, then reached into his coat and pressed something into her palm, a small silver locket. "For shelter," he said. "And for faith." She watched him ride away, his figure shrinking against the wide sky. The cabin felt empty again, but different now. Warmer. As Eleanor turned back toward her door, she felt the loneliness loosen its grip. The rain had brought a stranger, and in his leaving, he had left behind something far greater than gold, a reminder that even in the harshest storms, mercy could still find its way home.